How's it going, everybody? Welcome into the Skyline Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jack Hartman, joined, as always, by my good friend, my co-host on the West Coast, Nick Normand. Nick, how you doing, man?
Doing well, doing well. Repping my Steelers with my Italians shirt. I am Italian. I am a Steelers fan. I have never been to Pittsburgh though, so I am not Yins at this point. I'm not Yins enough for it. But just enjoying a week that I get to celebrate a Steelers win from last Sunday against the Jets. The Jets are the Jets, but it was a tight game. It was a fun game. A lot of offense, a lot of scoring. Chris Boswell's leg is just incredible. 60-yard game-winning field goal. Such a fun game. Just soaking it all in this week, Jack. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, man. It's started the new job this week, and it's just been such a blessing. It is flannel weather where I am in Pennsylvania. When we were living in Texas, flannel weather was like 2 weeks in like January, and that was it. So happy to feel that cool breeze when I wake up in the mornings. And you mentioned the Jets are the Jets. These Jets are not the Jets, man. You can
Mm.
tell. You can tell. We may talk about it a little bit, but the way we're going to structure the episode this week, we're going to take the first half to just touch on a few things that caught our eye from last week, from week one of the NFL season, and then take the second half to talk about some things that we're looking forward to going here into week number two of the NFL season. Football is back. NFL football is back, and we're super excited about it. So, Nick, we're going to start by going with, what was one thing that impressed us this week in this first week of the season, whether that's a player, a coach, a team, whatever that looks like. So I'll go first here, and for me, the thing that was the most impressive to me this week was Justin Fields, man. Justin Fields looked like the best quarterback the Jets have had in a single game performance outside of the random Ryan Fitzmagic that we would see every once in a while, probably for as long as we've been alive. He looked really, really good this last week. He looked athletic and comfortable running the football. Everyone was concerned that between him, Brees Hall, and Braylon Allen, that he was only going to be throwing the ball 13 times a game, and that the offense wouldn't be able to do anything because defenses would just be able to sit there and play for the run, and there was no fear of the passing game. Justin Fields looked sharp throwing the ball. He looked decisive. He didn't look confused. He didn't look like he wasn't sure what he was doing. And again, week one is week one. I think for as good as Justin Fields looked, you can say at the same time also that the Steelers defense looked really bad, and it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing. What was it? Was Justin Fields really good? Was the Steelers defense really bad to inflate and deflate, either side of that? But even still, like he looked comfortable. I think, we've talked about how many different offensive coordinators he's had throughout his career, and I think everyone was like, "Oh, poor Justin Fields. He's going to a new team, and that's going to happen again." I think he's just like so used to it at this point that he's able to really grasp these new systems that he keeps showing up to, and I think that showed a lot with the Jets this week. I think all of the talk being, well, they're basically going to run the ball 70% of the time helped. I think we saw a good bit of play action that he was able to get outside the pocket and move as a runner and as a thrower that I think the Steelers were not prepared for. And I was really, really impressed with Justin Fields. I think even still, it's highly likely that the Jets are going to be drafting a quarterback in the first round this next year. But nonetheless, at least with week one, Fields put tape out there that made it seem like, you know what, the Jets might have their guy. And really happy for him because there's just been such negative talk that has followed him literally his whole career. Like it was, I mean, the Bears are the Bears, and he had to deal with that and deal with how awful it was to be a Chicago Bear under, Matt Nagy and Matt Eberflus. Um, and then, went to Pittsburgh and played great those first 6 games. Mike Tomlin decided we're going to move to Russell Wilson, and it worked. For the most part, the Steelers got into the playoffs or whatever, but then it seemed like, oh man, if they've given up on him, then like that's it. He goes and gets this deal with the Jets, and he makes the most of it in week 1. I'm really happy for him and very impressed with him and his play, because I didn't think that he was going to look that good this week.
Mm-hmm. I'm definitely there with you. He was incredibly impressive. For me, I watched every single snap of that game. And I wasn't just impressed with him. The whole operation of the Jets offense was incredibly impressive. The play calling by new offensive coordinator Tanner Engstrom, super impressive. The offensive line looked dominant, even without Elijah Vera Tucker, who was ruled out with an injury for the entire season. He's going to be out all year. And even without Vera Tucker, they were still running the ball at will. Breece Hall looked great. Braylon Allen looked really good too as a power back. This is clearly, to me, the best offensive line and run game that Fields has played with his entire career. 100%. And to me, the offense looked really, really similar to what a Lamar Jackson offense would look like, where Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson just read option. You either have to go with the running back that way and they tear off a huge chunk, or Justin Fields is going to be running and getting a huge chunk that way, or Lamar, depending on which team you're talking about. Mm-hmm. But that offense, when you have a deadly running game, is ridiculous. Lamar Jackson's offense pre-Derrick Henry was good and really efficient and a great offense. With Derrick Henry, though, you see how it goes against the Bills, where Derrick Henry racks up 160 whatever yards. He did that against the Steelers last year, where you have to commit to one, and if you commit to one, the other is just ripping off huge chunks of easy yards. And that's what Breece Hall was doing. That's what Justin Fields was doing. And being able to be a complementary passer, where you're not dominating the game as a passer, you're not dropping back 40 times or so, 30, 40 times, but being able to manage the game, not turn the ball over, be able to make good decisions on when to hand it off, when to pull it, be able to throw to the open man, the tight end. Garrett Wilson got involved a lot this game. It was just a really impressive overall offensive performance. The line movement by the offensive line. This is clearly, to me, the best Jets offense in over a decade, since the Ryan Fitzpatrick, Eric Decker, Brandon Marshall days. Like, this is clearly the best Jets offense in years. It was really impressive.
Yeah. And, shout out rookie Armand Membo. He looked great. He looked like a guy that you can run behind for sure. And he gave Justin Fields time, and I know that there was a lot of thought oh man, right? You got a rookie offensive tackle, you've got this quarterback that is new, and all of that. But the operation, like you said, looked great. I went into this year, I've got Garrett Wilson on my fantasy team. I was really concerned about it. I was thinking I don't know if Justin Fields can get him the ball. And right after the draft, I was shopping him a little bit. No one wanted him. And now I've got guys reaching out to me, seeing if I'm willing to trade Garrett Wilson. So yeah. So, I mean, he looked great. Also just kind of, I know that I said my impressive was Justin Fields, but talking about the Jets in general, they looked like a good unit. Like the team, the defense looked like an Aaron Glenn defense, they played hard, which I think in football, the whole hey, let's give their team props for playing hard is pretty dumb. You're playing football, right? You have to play hard, but it was different, right? It didn't look like what we typically see out of the Jets, regardless of whether they're winning or losing, that they're kind of lollygagging a little bit and everything. Stuff to clean up for sure on the defensive end, stuff to clean up on special teams. Absolutely. Hey, shout out to Aaron Glenn, first time head coach, not messing around. The Jets released Xavier Gibson this week after his huge fumble, but yeah, no, I think I have more faith and confidence in the Jets, even just after 1 week, than I have at any other point in my lifetime, and
100%.
Yeah.
Clearly the best O-line the Jets have had in years, clearly the best run game, clearly the best coached Jets team in over a decade. That's clear and obvious to me. What head coach is even close to how well coached they looked this week? The only thing that you could point to really would be the fumble and being oh, you got to tighten up special teams. The dude got cut immediately this week after fumbling that. And it was a good play by special teams, by Pittsburgh, by Ben
Yeah.
Skoranek to jump on that ball. They ripped the ball out. It wasn't like he was being loose with the football. Like a fumble's a fumble, and nobody should ever fumble. But that being the only real blemish on this Jets team as far as poor coaching, it was a really awesome game by the Jets. If the Jets could replicate this at all this season in any facet, I think we would be elated for the Jets. And every Jets fan should be elated to see any version that looks anything like this year.
Yeah. And I think if they replicate it, they win a good number of games and win games against good teams. Because the other thing to think about, without a miracle off, like laying on his back, ball just ends up on his gut catch by DK Metcalf. Without that, there's a chance that the Steelers don't win the game. Now there was still plenty of time left, and Chris Boswell again has a leg that's insane. God. But still, like without that play, it's like, whoa, okay, how different is this? So huge props to the Jets and especially Justin Fields this week. Nick, what was your biggest? This was really impressive to me this week.
To me, there were a number of quarterbacks that were really impressive. Aaron Rodgers against the Jets was really impressive, turning back the clock. Josh Allen and his shootout with the Ravens looked really impressive to me as well. The dude actually that I'm going to give a shout to was the Thursday night game last week was Dak Prescott on Thursday Night Football against the Eagles. Dak was able to shred the Eagles defense in the first half, at least. In the first half, nobody was stopping any offense. But the mobility that Dak showed, the decision-making, the arm talent, I don't know if you saw any of the images of him in the locker room pre or post-game, but he's cut. Like, he has been working out where he's, like, jacked. Like, Jalen Hurts is jacked and can squat 1 billion pounds or whatever it is that everybody sees the picture of him squatting 500 pounds. Awesome. Dak Prescott looked really, really good with an offense that I don't think people thinks that talented outside of CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, with a run game that was looking good, with an offensive line that looked good. But Dak Prescott was the one managing that game, keeping them in that game, making throws, made a bunch of throws to CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb dropped some passes and stuff. But last year, Dak Prescott looked really unimpressive in the handful of games that he played before he got injured and was out for the year. And this year, he looks back to clearly being a top 10 quarterback. Like, clearly to me, he looked like a clear top 10, top 8, above their kind of quarterback that was really, really impressive and somebody who I think could put the Cowboys in a position where if their defense is any good, that they could make the playoffs. And I don't think anybody was thinking about the Cowboys making the playoffs in a division with Washington and the Eagles. And to me, Dak himself looked so good where he might be able to will them into that position. And I didn't think of Dak as that sort of player, and he looked that good. So I want to give Dak those props. Really impressive outing by Dak Prescott.
Yeah, he looked good. The Cowboys, I mean, they were in that game, in the NFL, I will say, in college football, moral victories, absolutely. In the NFL, it's hard to find more moral victories. It's just, but everyone was saying that the Cowboys were a joke, that after the Micah Parsons trade, like, this team is no good. They'll be lucky to win 5 games this year. And there's a chance that they still do that. But they're not going to get laughed off the field every week if they look like that. That team, the difference between that team and the team that lost to the Lions 43-8 last year or whatever it was, is that team didn't have Micah Parsons. Like, that was the difference. And yet still they looked very competent. They looked in control. Huge shout outs to Schottenheimer. Again, even in a loss, similar to what we were saying about the Jets and Aaron Glenn, even in a loss, the team looked right. They looked confident. They looked trustworthy. I was one that thought that it was a terrible hire. I'm going to be honest. Like, I was just, especially with the guys that were available that they didn't even reach out to, I was shocked. But he impressed me and proved himself to me this week.
Definitely. Dak and the whole Cowboys, I think, as you were saying, there are no moral victories in the NFL, really, but that was as close to a moral victory as you can get. They were in that game. CeeDee Lamb, all the drops that he had. The Eagles were wanting to give that game away, and the Cowboys were taking that opportunity. They were doing a great job. Their role players were playing really well, and there were just those singular few moments of struggle. And that happened. Same thing with Miles Sanders with the fumble right before there was the delay with the lightning. There were just one or two moments, but that Cowboys team was very, very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to the things that were concerning in this last week. What I was going to say, and I still think it's true, it is very concerning, was my Detroit Lions offensive line and run game. But what I think I actually is the most concerning to me, again, and all of this, of course, we're saying after 1 week, right? We're talking about the Jets and Cowboys, even in losses, like they're going to be Super Bowl contenders this year. They're not, but we can only talk about what just happened in week 1, right? But something that was concerning to me in week 1 was AFC contenders defenses. We had a lot of teams that we are saying are Super Bowl contenders in the AFC that if their defense continues to be the way it was this last week, it's going to be very, very concerning about what it might look like. Thinking about the Steelers defense. The Steelers defense did not look good against the Jets. And again, when we talked about how good the Jets looked, it's, chicken or egg. Is the Jets offense that good, which made the Steelers defense look bad? Or is the Steelers defense that bad, which made the Jets offense look good? Who's to say? But for the sake of this conversation, at this point, talking about the Steelers defense did not look good. The Buffalo Bills defense looked really, really bad.
Mm-hmm.
The Baltimore Ravens defense looked really, really bad.
Mm-hmm.
The Kansas City Chiefs defense looked bad. Now, they didn't give up as many points as those other three teams, but still, the defense did not look like they were able to stop the Chargers at all, right? Justin Herbert threw for 318 yards and had 3 touchdowns. The run game was working there for the Chargers as well. The Chiefs defense did not look good. Other teams, that fall into the same category. Despite the Broncos only giving up 12 points to the Titans, Cam Ward looked really, really good against what we're calling one of, if not the best defense in the AFC, and the Broncos defense. That is concerning because, okay, they only gave up 12 points this last week. Well, what happens when they face the Chargers and Justin Herbert and an experienced offense with a really good offensive line with receivers that aren't going to, well, Quentin Johnston, but in theory, receivers that aren't going to drop, passes that are put right in the bread bucket for them, So I am concerned about defenses of these AFC contenders. They did not look good this week. Luckily they were, again, Bills and Ravens, mentioned both of them. Well, they were playing each other. So it's like, okay, well, that worked out. Well, what happens when one of them is facing, a team with a really good defense? You can't trust that Josh Allen can miracle your way to a victory and, scoring 41 points like that, especially if that's what is necessary and you need every single week. And some of those teams, this was just week 1 of this year. It's like, whoa, defense looked bad. The Bills defense was not good last year either. When they went to Detroit and beat the Lions still scored 42 points or 41 points in that game, So I'm concerned about, and again, it's week 1. We're overreacting to 1 week of football. There are kinks that need to get worked out for every team. And I don't feel like I know those teams and those units well enough that I can pinpoint, but this is a real issue that they have to fix. This is a real issue that they have to fix for all of them. But there's definitely stuff that you need to go to the drawing board and make sure you iron out, and iron out quickly before things get out of hand.
Mm-hmm. I'd go even one step further with what you're saying. What AFC team had the most dominant win? Every AFC team, even the ones who win, even the ones who we think highly of, weren't winning dominantly. The Steelers didn't beat the Jets dominantly. The Ravens didn't look dominant. Their run game looked dominant. The Bills' defense looked dreadful. They got ran over by Derrick Henry again. The Chiefs didn't look dominant. The Chargers looked good, but still
The
to a
most
depleted Chiefs offense.
the most complete
Raiders?
the most complete AFC team this last week was the Indianapolis Colts. They scored 33 points behind Danny Dimes and only gave up 8 points to an offense that we were falling over ourselves worshiping not that many years ago under Mike McDaniel, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if that was the highest standard of this week, then it just goes to show how concerning it is for the rest of these teams, you know? And again, everything will end up falling back in order where it's supposed to go, right? But still, yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's really concerning with these superstar teams that last year they had these concerns, and a bunch of the concerns are still here. The Bills got ran over by Baltimore in the regular season last year. Ran over. And this year they got ran over again. And a couple of late plays, the turnover by Derrick Henry with the fumble, the defense being more conservative, they still got ran over. The Bills' defensive line clearly didn't get any better. Ed Oliver played very well forcing that fumble and making plays. But Ed Oliver getting a little bit better clearly didn't change Derrick Henry obliterating their defense. That is a massive concern. And the Ravens are known for blowing these big leads and have for the last several years. That's still a massive concern. How have they not plugged these holes? That is shocking to me that these contenders haven't plugged these holes. Last year, we were concerned about the Chiefs' offense looking old and being injured. And this year, we thought, they'll be healthier, they'll be better. Still, Travis Kelce didn't have a dominant game. Worthy got injured immediately by Kelce, and Rashee Rice is out and coming off of a torn ACL. The Chiefs still have the exact same concerns. That's such a worry for these AFC teams that we think have demigods at quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be really, really interesting, especially then, we're talking, and all those teams that we mentioned, or pretty much all those teams that we mentioned, we're playing other AFC teams, once we start to see them play their NFC counterparts this year, I mean, we might come to find that, the NFC is much more top heavy, or not top heavy, much more dominant than the AFC is, which would be really, really interesting, because I think for so long we've talked about how great the AFC is, despite, NFC teams winning Super Bowls recently. But still it's like, the NFC has the Eagles and that's it, or the NFC has the Eagles and the Lions and that's it. But it's like, the AFC, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, the Bengals. I mean, it's just all of these titans, that it's like, is this, are we starting to teeter towards the other side of that a little bit? So
the Bengals are another team that had the same concerns. They start off slow every year, and Joe Burrow started off slow all over again. They won because the Browns kicker threw the game with a missed extra point and kick. But still, Joe Burrow starting off slow, it's more of the same concerns. How are these teams not plugging these holes? How is it that they're drafting and coaching things differently and getting the exact same result? It's a major concern.
Yeah. Nick, what was the most concerning thing to you this last week?
For me, most concerning thing I would say would be two coaches that are on the hot seat. There are two coaches in this league that I think people came into the league this year thinking they're on the hot seat. I'm worried about them. They need to start stringing together some wins. And they looked out of sorts and were getting smacked. And I think now their seats are blazing hot that there are two dudes. One, you talked about the game already. That'd be Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins. The entire Dolphins organization, I think, is on notice. I can't name anybody there who I think should be safe. Waddle and A-Chain and some of the offensive players, good. Tyreek Hill, that's a massive red flag, all the drama going on with him. He could be cut or traded. We just have no idea at this point. But McDaniel's, all of the reports last year were he's a player's coach. He's not tough enough. He's too loose with stuff. And then the reports out of training camp when there was an inter-squad practice, did you see those reports about another team coming in and the Dolphins were like, the other team's hitting too hard. They're playing too physically. They were complaining about in a joint practice. These are the exact same concerns we had for the Dolphins and the exact same issues we had with Mike McDaniel. And they looked way worse than anybody could have ever thought. There are people that think the Colts are going to be the worst team in the league this year with Daniel Jones and AR, and they got obliterated by the Colts. It wasn't close. Mike McDaniel's seat was hot already before this with all the dysfunction in Miami. His seat couldn't be hotter. I can't imagine it being any worse for them in Miami with Mike McDaniels. And the other guy, that'd be Brian Daboll and the Giants. Russell Wilson still looked horrendous. Brian Daboll wasn't able to generate much offense with an offense that has had some issues with Andrew Thomas, with injury issues, with the run game that's been hit or miss, with pass catchers who outside of Neighbors really struggle. And even with that incredible defensive line that we have all lauded, saying the Giants might have the best edge rush combo in the last 25 years with all of Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, Thibodeau. Then you got Sexy Dexy in the middle, who's the best defensive tackle in the league. And even with all of that talent, they still got obliterated. It wasn't close. Daboll's been on the hot seat for a couple of years and was kind of bailed out by some lucky breaks getting Daniel Jones to the playoffs and winning a playoff game a couple of years ago. But it has been a disaster in a city that's been a disaster for many, many years in the NFL in New York with the Giants. I'm really concerned for Daboll. I'm really concerned for McDaniels. And they didn't answer a single question with their team's week one performances.
Yeah, I think that the Giants have to go with Jackson Dart. I mean, let me rephrase that. I think that Brian Daboll has to go with Jackson Dart. I've said it so many times on this podcast, and I really am a believer in let's not draft these rookies and immediately put them in and expect them to save the day. Because, it doesn't work out. More organizations ruin quarterbacks than quarterbacks save organizations. That's been very, very clear here over the last, 15 years or so. But that said, I really like Jackson Dart. I really liked what we saw out of him in the preseason. I think he came out of college so experienced that, I think he can do it. And I think for the sake of Brian Daboll's job, he's got to do it, and I've been a very big defender and supporter of Brian Daboll because I felt that the organization has, failed him in that they let Saquon go and decided to pay Daniel Jones, right? Like I thought that hurt him significantly because he came in, he got that team to the playoffs and won a playoff game. Now imagine if after that they do what they have to do to hold on to Saquon Barkley. They franchise tag Daniel Jones, and after a year, Daboll is able to say, listen, we need to upgrade a quarterback. What type of team are we looking at with the New York Giants at that point? And so, I was a very avid supporter that he should not have gotten fired after last year. He deserved a chance to make things right with a quarterback other than Daniel Jones. But that said, there's no way that Jackson Dart makes the Giants worse than they are with Russell Wilson, and I think that's what matters with these guys that are on the hot seat is, are you going to, even if things don't go great, are you still able and willing to make the decision that helps the team, the most right now and for the future? And the answer to that is Jackson Dart.
Mm-hmm. I think even if you don't go with Jackson Dart this moment, I think you gotta at least give Jameis Winston a shake. Like Russell Wilson is not it. He's had issues the last couple of years. Jameis Winston at least is box office. Nobody is paying tickets and wanting to go to a game to see Russell Wilson in 2025. Yeah. Jameis Winston with the Browns the last couple of years. Jameis Winston just showing up, slinging the ball, being fun, is able to lead you to a victory here and there. But I really think the Giants, they just got to hold out until week 5, I guess. Their schedule is just brutal this year, man. This week they have at the Cowboys in Dallas. Next week they have the Chiefs come into town the week after. The week after that, the Chargers come into town. Then the week after that, October 5th, they go to the Saints and Spencer Rattler. I think you got to hold out and then say, okay, Jackson Dart, let's go try and beat the Saints. Because outside of the Saints, it's just brutal. After that, you got Philly. You have the Broncos defense. You have Philly again. You have the Niners November 2nd. And then Bears, Packers, Lions, Patriots. Like, I feel like you want to give Jackson Dart a soft intro to be able to have him not flop immediately against one of these teams. And I guess you try and hold out until the Saints in week 5. Try and say, hey, Jameis, can you come in? Or, hey, can we survive with Russ not being an absolute laughingstock for a month? But this is just a mess, and I don't even think that Jackson Dart can save this situation this year at least.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's move on to and transition to talking about this next week. We've each picked a game that we're intrigued by. We've picked one because there's a team that has looked really good in week 1, and we're excited to see in this week and their matchup this week. Hey, are they on an upward trajectory? Do they continue the success? And we also picked a game that includes a team that looked bad the previous week or did not meet expectations, and we're really concerned that things could spiral quickly. So that said, the game that I am very intrigued by, one of the games I'm very intrigued by this week is the Broncos traveling to Indianapolis, to Lucas Oil Stadium, to play the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts, like we talked about, in some ways looked like the best, most well-rounded team in the AFC last week. Granted, they were playing against the Dolphins, who I think everyone agreed going into this year that the Dolphins were not going to be a good team. Did we think they would be this bad? I don't think so, but still, we knew that there were going to be issues and concerns there. But the Colts did not just pass that test. They absolutely knocked that test out of the park. Now they've got a 1-0 Broncos coming into town, battle of the horses between the Colts and the Broncos. The Broncos, they beat the Titans last week, but like we mentioned, we have some concerns about their defense that's supposed to be the best in the AFC. They're going to be playing against a more experienced and better offense. They are going to be that's the Broncos, that is. And also the Broncos offense didn't look very good last week against a defense that I think a lot of us have a lot of concerns about. So it'll be really, really interesting to see that game this week. It sort of fits, has a team that fits both of those categories that we talked about. And the Colts is a team that played really well. Let's see, are they actually on the rise, or did they just have a really good start to the season, as well as a Broncos team that even in a win comes with some concerns and some holes that we are keeping an eye on. I think it'll be a really, really good matchup to sort of see, like, either, okay, let's reestablish, what we know the order is supposed to be. It feels right. The Broncos beat the Colts. The Colts don't look good. The Broncos look good. And it's like, okay, this makes more sense. Or do we see a complete flip in the AFC between those two teams with a dominant Colts victory this week as the other possibility? Will be interesting to see.
I think that's a super fun game. I really like the Titans, who played against the Broncos and kept it a 1-score game. I think Cam Ward's going to be a lot of fun, and so I think that was just a matchup last week that I would like to see more of. That's a cool game, though. I like that it kind of has two different teams that fit the criteria. I'm super stoked about tonight's game, about the Thursday night football game, man. Washington against the Packers today at 5:15 West Coast time, 8:15 East Coast time. I'm just looking at this game as a game where we both think that these teams are good. We're trying to figure out how good. Washington made the NFC Championship last year, and there are definitely folks out here who think that's a fluke, who think, oh, Jaden Daniels got the jump on people. He's really good, had that really great rookie year when people weren't able to prepare. But really, are they that talented? Could they replicate that this year? And then we have the Packers, who have been good the last couple of years. But, is Jordan Love going to put it together? Is Micah Parsons going to put them over the hump? Are they going to even win their division? And then there are some folks who think that they're going to be a Super Bowl team. If one of these teams is able to dominantly beat the other one, that catapults them to me in the NFC, because the NFC to me feels like it's kind of open competition with the Eagles not looking as dominant as they were last year. Or if the Packers can shellac Washington, then the Packers immediately become a top 2 team in the league, become the team that everybody's like, whoa, wait a second, they might be the most complete, awesome team here. If Washington's able to smack the Packers, then everybody's going to be like, okay, Jaden Daniels, like, that wasn't a fluke. He's still a superstar. He's still clearly a top 6 or 7 QB, maybe even top 5, depending on who you ask. And wow, look at that. He did it last week against a woe-begotten Giants team. But look at what he's doing against a Packers team whose defense just shut down Detroit's run game and was able to keep Detroit to a touchdown before the final couple of seconds, with Isaac Tesla making an incredible catch. Like, depending on how this game goes, it will shift our perspective on 2 big players and teams in the NFC. So I'm super excited about this one.
Yeah, that is, it is a very weird Thursday night football game, because it's going to be a good one. We're not. It's crazy, but back when Blake Bortles was the quarterback of the Jaguars, it felt like we were seeing Jaguars Colts literally every week on Thursday Night Football. Mm-hmm. And it's like, wow, this is going to be a really good game on Thursday Night Football. That's interesting.
With the gradient helmets on the Jaguars too, with the gold to gray looking helmets. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. Hey, Blake Bortles made an AFC Championship game, which is just
that he should have won. Miles Jack was not down. He was not touched.
Anyway, we're getting off topic, but yeah, no, I think that's going to be a really good one. I think that will certainly, like you said, winner of that one will seriously shift our thoughts, our feelings about them in terms of where they fall on the ladder of the NFC, and yeah, it should kick off another great week of football. It'll be interesting to see how good Washington's offense looks, because they did not look great last week. Again, the Giants defense is supposed to be good, but still it was like, so it'll be interesting to see, how they do against a much tougher test with the Packers defense. Mm-hmm. All right, a game that I am really intrigued by with a team that needs to bounce back, an early AFC North battle between the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens. Typically, this would be like, why are we even mentioning this? The Ravens, they scored 40 points last week. The Browns couldn't score at all last week. This isn't going to be a big deal, except for the fact that the Browns just always seem to find a way to do something weird and pesky to AFC North teams, right? Mm-hmm. Like every single year, they win at least 1, if not 2 or 3 in games in the division, when every single time we expect them to go 0-6. And because of that, because the Ravens are coming off such a heartbreaking loss, I am concerned that this could be a very early on and massive trap game for the Baltimore Ravens. Mm-hmm. And the thing about it in the NFL is, once you lose a game, you've lost that game, right? And that's not a weird thing about the NFL. That's how all sports work. But compared to, thinking about college football, for example, and it's like, oh, we have these big games early in the season that teams might lose, but they still have to play a tough, conference gauntlet, and they haven't played a conference game yet. They could still win their conference, and it's like, oh, no, they're a really good team, despite, like, oh, man, Clemson lost a close one to LSU in the first week of the season. But Clemson lost a close one to LSU first week of the season, and then almost went and lost to Troy. And just like that, they're 0-2 if that happens, but they still have the chance to compete within the conference and make the playoff because they win their conference. But at the NFL, it doesn't work like that. And especially, they've already lost a game in the AFC. And if they were to lose this one, they would lose a game in the AFC and in the division. And that is a really big hole to crawl out of that early in the season. Now, I do still think that the Ravens are a really good team and are a top 3 team in the AFC. And I think even if that happened, there's still absolutely a world where they do that. But I am very, very concerned about the Baltimore Ravens. They need to win this game, and they don't just need to win it. They need to dominate this game because the Browns are a much inferior opponent. And if they don't, I'm going to be extremely concerned about them moving forward when they play the tougher games, when they play the Bengals 2 times, when they play the Steelers 2 times, when they play these other opponents that it's not going to go so easy for them.
Mm-hmm. I'm massively concerned about this being a trap game too. I'm 100% there with you. Joe Flacco, when he's facing other AFC North teams in division, like it just feels like he's been around so long. He knows all the tricks of the trade. He'll sling the ball to whoever. Where like, man, it feels like these interdivision weird Browns upset funky games. Like that's what should have happened last week. Joe Flacco and the Browns should have beat the Bengals. It was just the kicker who threw. But that should have been a house of horrors for the Bengals losing that game. That should have been Joe Burrow should be balling this week, and the Bengals should be pissed off that the Browns snuck out a game against them. They didn't, but that's the kind of caliber the team was playing. The Browns were playing good enough football to win that game. They were playing well enough to be able to beat an AFC North team that they are far inferior to. And that's what the Browns do. That's what this iteration does. The Steelers have lost in recent years. The only win that Dorian Thompson-Robinson has gotten as a starter was against the Steelers and Kenny Pickett. The Steelers lost to Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And last year, Anthony Richardson got hurt as the Colts starting quarterback, and then Joe Flacco comes in, and Joe Flacco beats the Steelers and guides them to win against them, when really, without Anthony Richardson slinging the ball, they might have been a better team with Joe Flacco and because of how inaccurate Richardson was. But with Richardson out, Joe Flacco was able to guide them against the Steelers team that made the playoffs that was 10-3 at one point. And with the Colts team that nobody thought was great last year, nobody thought the Colts were going to make a run or anything last year. And Joe Flacco was able to beat the Steelers. I'm 100% there with you. It is super trap gamey. I would, against the spread, I'd place a large wager on the Browns this week against the Ravens. And especially having Josh Allen beat you in week 1 in a crazy comeback. And if they lose to the Browns this week, the Ravens would be sick to their stomach starting off 0-2 in that fashion. Starting off 0-2 at all is terrible. But if Josh Allen and the Bills play a perfect game and are incredible and just like in all 3 phases beat you in week 1, and then the Chiefs beat you in week 2, you get it. But a crazy comeback when you're up and Derrick Henry's incredible in week 1, then to the Browns in week 2, the Ravens would just be throwing up in their mouth. That will be terrible for them. Oh my God.
Yeah. According to ESPN Bet, the spread is the Ravens are favored by 11.5. I think even if they win, I think that's going to be closer. And here's the thing about trap games, right? We call them out, we call them trap games, and there's a chance that, the team is ready for it, and the Ravens show up and they win 42-14. That could very well happen, and we're like, you know what? We had nothing to be worried about. The Ravens established, no, we are a good team. Josh Allen is the reigning MVP for a reason, and he did Josh Allen stuff. But again, you can't take a game like this for granted if you're Baltimore. So it'll be very, very, very intriguing that both that game and the Colts Broncos game both at 1:00 on Sunday. Will be very interesting to see what happens there in that early window.
Mm-hmm. I have a stinky game that I'm very curious about how we're feeling about it. That would be Mac Jones guiding the 49ers against the Spencer Rattler Saints. This is a stinky, stinky game. This 49ers offense, Trent Williams getting banged up, CMC at this point always getting hurt, Jawan Jennings is hurt, Kittle's out, he's on IR now, Purdy's going to be out, and we get Mac Jones. That is a stinky, stinky offense, and a defense that we've thought over the last year has been gutted against a Saints team that I think is the worst team in the league. And I think the Saints team, if they're able to sneak out a win against the 49ers team that should be fending for their life, like they're lucky that they beat Seattle in week 1 with all the injuries they had, with Sam Darnold running into the backside of his own offensive lineman, fumbling with his arm. Like, they're lucky to get out of there with a win. But, like, man, if they lose to this Saints team with Spencer Rattler, with Olave injured again, with older Alvin Kamara, with Talisi Fuaga, the right tackle, out right now, injured. This Saints team is terrible, and this 49ers team has something to prove. Like, they've got to be holding it together with duct tape, like trying to keep things together, because this game is going to be awful. These teams are not good. If either of these teams played a mid team in our eyes, I think the Raiders would smoke both of these teams this week. Like, I think a half decent team would walk over both of these teams. But I'm just really curious, are the Saints not a dumpster fire, like waiting to go 2-15? They kept in the game last week with the Cardinals. They kept it a 1-score game. It was 13-20. Mm-hmm. And this 49ers team that I think is going to be terrible this week, they were able to win it with Purdy being clutch. But without Purdy being clutch, and that last throw I think should have been an interception by Purdy getting the touchdown. He, like, to Tonches, like, that was just not a good throw that Tonches made a great play on the ball. But my God, this game, both of these teams, like, what the hell? This is just a hell of a game that I'm not going to be watching, I don't think, but it's just that kind of game, man.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, you know, like we were talking about, man, how bad is it for the Ravens if they end up, you know, 0-2? The inverse can be said about the you know, Niners right now. You know, despite how ugly it might be, it doesn't matter if you win, right? It does not matter as long as you win. So, you know, them going 2-0 with a win, you know, with a win, no matter how ugly it is this week, is like the exact inverse of the Ravens if they go 0-2 because they lose this week, right? But the Ravens, it would be an AFC loss and an AFC division loss. With the Niners, it would be an NFC division win and then another NFC win, right? Does not matter if they win this game 9-6. It is a win, and a win is a win, and puts them at 2-0 and at the top of the NFC West. You know, which
this is a fighting kneecaps game. This is a Kyle Shanahan specifically, like Dan Campbell when he was talking about we're going to be biting people's kneecaps. Kyle Shanahan, you got to be having your team bite kneecaps and like just come out the mud in this game. Do anything for a win. You don't need to be pretty. You don't need to be on the screws. You need to be effort, fighting, ugly, tearing it out of their hands, whatever you can do kind of game. This has got to be gutty and gritty this week.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoy the games this week. We'll be back next week to touch base on those the games that are happening this weekend. Enjoy those games. Good luck to your fantasy teams. I hope that you start who you're supposed to start and bench who you're supposed to bench. Yeah, everybody have a great weekend. Enjoy the games, and we'll talk to you next week.